All right, so in this video, we're going to take a look at taking your Plan 3 pension at age 55 and taking the max penalty, which is 20%. So we're going to see, can this make sense, or in what scenarios it would make sense. So I got all the numbers broken down here for you. So I'm going to show you kind of a baseline example, and then I'm going to show you worst case, best case scenario. This way you can make an educated decision on if taking the pension at age 55 will make sense for you. All right, so first let's just set the scene. So remember, Plan 3 gives you 1% for every year you work, and they base it on the average of your top 5 years. So let's say we're going to base today's scenario on someone that works 30 years. 30 times 1, that gives you 30%. Let's say your average salary is $100,000. 30% of $100,000, that gives you $30,000 per year, right? So let's call this our base scenario, and let's say this person's going to collect at age 62. So if we wanted to collect at age 55, we're only going to get about 80% of that $30,000 or $24,000, right? So scenario 1, we're going to keep everything pretty basic here. I'm going to cancel any cost of living adjustments. So if I started collecting my benefit at age 55, I got $24,000. I got that every single year. By the time I'm 62, I already would have pulled $168,000 from the system. Now by that time, had I waited until age 62 to collect my benefit, my $30,000 pension would have actually grown to a little over $36,000. Now, why is that? Plan 3 has a 3% guaranteed indexing strategy. So if I didn't collect my benefit at 55, I could have opted to retire at 55 and hold off collecting my benefit. The state would have given me a 3% growth on my $30,000 every single year guaranteed. So a $30,000 pension becomes $36,000 per year just for deferring it for 7 years at that 3% guaranteed compounded rate. So now the question is, when am I going to break even? So to calculate break even, we look at how much we pulled from the system completely. So we pulled $168,000 by collecting early, and what the difference would have been if we waited. So the difference between $24,000 and $36,000, call it $800, it's about $12,800. So how long will it take for that $12,000, almost $13,000 difference to catch up and make up for that $168,000 we already pulled from the system? In that case, it'll take about 13 years, which means you'll be around age 74 when that happens. Okay, so that's your base scenario, assuming no cost of adjustment. Remember that you do have cost of adjustments. They range from 0 to 3%. They're not guaranteed. They can be 0 sometimes, some years, and they have been, and they can be up to 3 at the max. One unique thing with the cost of living adjustments, though, is they do have a banking feature. So in an event that there's hyperinflation, like we're currently seeing here in 2021, if there was inflation of about 6% and they capped us at 3%, that extra inflation amount actually goes into a bank to be used at a future date. So if our cost of living was ever less than 3, they could go into the bank and make it up to push up to that maximum 3%. So a little known feature there. If you want more information on that, I'll link a video up top. So let's get back to it. So now let's assume we have cost of living adjustments built in. We're gonna look at your worst case scenario first. So worst case scenario, retired at 55, started collecting our $24,000, but we still got a 0% cost of living adjustment for those 7 years. So by the time we got to 62, the numbers are the same as our last scenario. I still have $24,000 a year coming in from my early retirement, whereas if I would have waited, I would have got that $36,000 and change. So the difference is still that $12,800, and I still pulled in the same amount. But now let's assume that cost of adjustments now kicks in after we're at age 62. So because we have $24,000 compounding at 3% and your $36,000 benefit that would have compounded 3%, those numbers compound differently. So the gap actually widens. So it starts at a $12,800 difference and it gets wider and wider. And in this case, you're going to break even in about 10 years or age 72. So worst case, if you were to collect your pension at 55, you break even at age 72. Now let's flip over to the best case scenario. So the best case scenario is one where you retire at 55 and you get a 3% cost of living adjustment every single year for the rest of your life. So you start off at 24,000 and the next year you get a 3% bump and so on and so forth. So by the time you're 62, your benefit actually would have rose to $29,000. At that point, you would have pulled $183,000 from the state system. So now let's compare those numbers. The $29,000 versus if we would have waited to collect our benefit being at $36,000 and change, the difference is only about $7,300. So in this case, we're going to break even around age 80, which is about 19 years. So worst case, if you were to collect your benefit at age 55, you break even at age 72. Best case, you're breaking even at age 80. Now 80 isn't all that old in my opinion, so collecting this early in Plan 3 really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I know a lot of people are asking about it, so there are the numbers for you. So when would it make sense? If for whatever reason you were just done working and you really needed the money, there could be one way to take it. Or maybe you think you're not going to live past 80, that may be another option to take it, but with the way medical advances are, people are living longer and longer. Age 80 isn't all that old anymore. Collecting it at 55 on Plan 3 doesn't quite make a lot of sense. So it doesn't mean you can't retire early. It just means it may not make the most sense to collect your pension quite this early, which may not be the deal breaker if you're trying for early retirement, as long as you have other assets saved. So tap into your Plan 3 bucket, that money you have set up on the side, or other assets to kind of help bridge the gap until you get closer to 62 so you can turn on that full benefit and not take that penalty. One thing to consider if you are planning for early retirement, because you're retiring earlier, you have to plan for more years, which means you're going to need more savings. You may have to take a different distribution rate. You also have to account for healthcare for the next 10 plus years. You're not going to be on your employer's healthcare. Also have to keep in mind of inflation and expenses. So you can see there's a lot of things to consider if you're trying for an early retirement. Doesn't mean it's not doable, just means you need careful planning. And I'm so shocked the amount of people that tell me that they want to retire early, but they don't really have a plan. And instead they go on and buy houses and things like that without ever consulting a professional to see if it's actually going to work out. That if they can actually retire early, move into a new house, still have a mortgage, and think it's going to work out. So the point here, before you make any move at all and plan for early retirement, make sure you consult with somebody to actually walk you through the different scenarios and build yourself an actual financial plan that can show you step by step how you can get to where you want to go. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Make sure you give it a thumbs up so it can spread to more state employees that may find this information useful. I'll see you guys next week. Remember that your future depends on what you do today.